May 6th meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. Thank you for joining us. The first order of business is to review and approve our minutes from April. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any comments, changes? Is there a motion to approve the April minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the April 2024 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you, they pass. Review and sign bills. Mr. McGoldrick, are there any bills?
No bills this evening.
All right, no bills. Wish we could say that at home. So at this point, we want to open it for our annual public hearing discussing community needs. We're going to start with Jason Molina. Will give a brief overview to start the conversation for us. I believe it'll be on the screens that you all can see out there. Jason, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I know we have a light attendance here, but we will have those watching at home, and hopefully if you're not able to attend tonight, you can still submit your responses back through our email address that'll be presented at the end of the presentation. So starting off, thank you for attending, and if you can come on to the next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to go over, here's the agenda for this part of it. I'm going to give an introduction to CPA, give a little history of CPA in Shrewsbury, talk about finances, the kinds of projects that CPA can fund, and then how to request a project, followed by what you can do tonight, and then the public forum to open up for your discussion. Moving next. So what is CPA? CPA was enacted in 2000, and it funds 4 of these specific areas. So outdoor recreation, open space, historic preservation, and community housing. And so far to date, 196 communities in Massachusetts have adopted CPA, including Shrewsbury, as you know, in 2020. Other communities that recently adopted it were Westboro and Worcester in 22, and then our other neighbors a few years back before that. CPA can fund, this chart's very important to absorb, and we'll cover this throughout the presentation. But basically, along the top of the 4 categories I described earlier, what CPA can fund, along with the project purposes that are important to consider as you think of a project to be raised. So things like acquiring, creating, preserving, supporting, or rehabilitation and or restoring one of those following items there. And where you see a green check mark is where obviously that's allowed and the X is not. All right, we'll get into a history of CPA in Shrewsbury. And town meeting had approved raising the ballot question in August of 2020, and that brought us to a ballot question in the November 2020 election, which subsequently passed, allowing for a 1% charge to be added to the real estate tax bill. So again, that's a tax bill, not the valuation of the home. And there were some exemptions that were included. Those are noted at the bottom of the slide. If you have interest in particular details about that, please certainly reach out to the planning department, or you can discuss that with the assessor's office. And then a CPC, which is a Community Preservation Committee, which is the body before you tonight, oversees those CPA funds. There are 9 members of that committee, so 5 of them are statutorily required, representing Conservation Commission, Historical Commission, Housing Authority, Parks and Cemetery Commission, and Planning Board. And then there are 4 at-large members, and then we are supported by the Planning and Economic Development Department. Let's talk about finances. CPA monies is primarily raised through that 1% surcharge that I mentioned earlier. That is estimated to be $820,000 for this fiscal year. And along with that, one of the key reasons why CPA was brought to the voters is because the state provides a lucrative incentive to adopt CPA with a annual variable surcharge,
A match.
Match. There we go. Thank you very much. And this year is estimated to be about 30%. So that's $246,000 added to the pot. So we're roughly looking at roughly $1.1 million each year. And these monies are segregated from the municipal budget. So again, they are specifically for open space, recreation, outdoor historic preservation, and affordable housing. And speaking of which, how they're allocated, this pie chart is intended to show the minimums that we tend to go by, which is to give us the maximum flexibility. So we set aside a minimum of 10% for those three categories I mentioned earlier. In this case, open space and recreation are constituted as one group, as determined by the CPA legislation. And then there's another bucket for the administrative duties of the CPC. And then finally, the remainder of the monies are allocated, or available, I should say, for any of the CPA categories, excluding administrative account. And that gives the most flexibility in case in a particular year there was a large historic preservation effort or a large affordable housing effort. Again, it gives us that flexibility. So what kind of projects can CPA fund? So we're going to go into each of the individual sections now. So here is open space, and here we can acquire, create, preserve, and restore and/or rehabilitate. And CPA defines open space as the following: things like land to protect land to lake and pond frontage, watershed land, fields, grasslands, forest lands, aquifers, and recharge areas, and land for recreational use. And we're going to go through, you'll see a theme here as I go through each of the sections. First, I'll talk about the projects that were previously approved, and then I'll talk about projects that are coming before town meeting this year. So what you see on screen now are at least two of the projects that were approved previously. One was for the purchase of parcels at Lake Street and Grove Street, and that was to create a larger network abutting the other open space that we currently have in Shrewsbury in that same area. And the next one was at Camp Wonigan, was to restore, to create parking for passive recreation in that space, which didn't exist before. Okay, and then upcoming for FY25 projects, also staying with Camp Wonigan, there's additional funds needed to complete the parking lot project. And there's also another project requested to create a accessible trail that was made feasible because of the parking that was going to be added. All right, now moving on to recreation. So here we can acquire, create, preserve, and rehabilitate and/or restore. And CPA defines recreation as playgrounds, trails, parks, athletic fields, land for community gardens, and non-commercial youth and adult sports. Again, here are projects that were previously approved. So there was a townwide playground assessment, including an Edgemere playground restoration. Also, there was a community-led effort to raise a project for the restoration of Arrowwood Park, which is a playground there. And this was the first part of that first phase, which is to get the design going. And we also had a previously approved a basketball court renovation at Dean Park. Okay, and then coming up for this town meeting, we have a request for funds to to make the current Store It Walk at Lake Street Park a permanent installation, and that's what you see there. Next, moving on to historic preservation. Here you can acquire, preserve, and rehabilitate or restore. And historic preservation is defined by CPA as being an artifact, building, document, vessel, real property, or a structure, which specifically has to be registered one of three registries, that being either the state register, a local register, or a national register of historic artifacts or the like. And so previous approved projects there, the 1830s brick schoolhouse, there was a humidity mitigation project there. Also an ADA rehabilitation assessment at District 5 Schoolhouse. Previously, there was also a rehabilitation assessment of the pergola at Prospect Park, and then phase one of the historic gravestone preservation at Mountain View Cemetery. And lastly, a previously approved project was the acquisition and the restoration of a 1926 American LaFrance fire engine, which previously used to be in Shrewsbury, left our town many years ago, and now has come back to Shrewsbury in hopes to be ready for our 300th anniversary. And then coming up for new projects for this year, we're looking at phase 2 of that Mountain View Cemetery Historic Gravestone Restoration Project. That will be the project to actually do the work that was assessed. And then next is another study at the District 5 Schoolhouse. This time it's a lower level detail of that study to see what's actually feasible given the recommendations that came out of phase 1. And then finally, community housing, aka affordable housing. Here you can see all the items, project purposes are lit up, so acquire, create, preserve, support, and rehabilitate and or restore. I'll just say that community housing has a predefined what constitute as affordable housing and folks that are allowed to be, who are considered eligible for that kind of housing. So if you're interested in this space, again, please see the planning department or assessor's office. And we had one recommended project, though there's some asterisks to that, but at least went through the mill to this committee, was a project to have a housing feasibility study at the Elizabeth Street housing, where to expand that existing housing to see if there's availability for more housing there. Okay, now going on to how to request a project. It looks like the slide got corrupt, which is okay, no problem. I can talk through that. So basically the process goes as follows. First, a project idea is formulated. So certainly if you're watching, you would say, okay, what kind of project do I want to envision? You would then come to the CPC through submitting an eligibility form. The eligibility form will give us the ability to weigh in on that and say, is this even allowable under CPA? Follow it after that. If it's eligible, then it would go to an application process where we would get further detail about your effort and weigh in on that. After that, we would see all the applicants and then weigh in the prioritization of those projects to see what we should move forward to town meeting. To get to town meeting, there's a existing process where all the warrant articles for town meeting are reviewed by the select board and the finance committee. And from there, we will go to town meeting, and town meeting has the ultimate say in terms of whether our project is approved, either at the funding that was requested, reduced, or declined. This year we had 8 projects that were raised to us. 6 of them were eligible, and we recommended 6 to move forward. And again, it's up to town meeting to decide on whether how many of those are ultimately approved. This timeline here is suggested, though we currently have a rolling submission process, and this is a best case for an annual town meeting. So. This part of the year, we will be looking at the community preservation plan and application process and reviewing them, taking your input in tonight and feeding that back into revisions into the community preservation plan. In the early fall, we'd be hoping for your eligibility submissions and for our review, followed by applications submissions later in the fall. In midwinter, or let's say January, February timeframe, we would be looking at the project prioritizations and making our recommendations. Finally, we would submit that around the March timeframe, April timeframe, to Finance Committee and Select Board for their review as part of the warrant process. And then again, that warrant, along with everything else, goes to town meeting in May. And lastly, what can you do in terms of this process? Tonight, we were hoping for your input about community preservation needs and opportunities. Again, if you're not here, unable to make it tonight, please submit through the planning@shrewsburyma.gov, that email address. Again, it's planning@shrewsburyma.gov. Also consider initiating a project on your own, or seek assistance again through planning. And then think back on those past conversations in terms of some of those ideas you've had floating around, or having conversations with other folks. Things like, remember when Shrewsbury used to have blank? Or remember, wouldn't it be great if Shrewsbury had a blank? Or if I wish Shrewsbury had a place for seniors, teens, veterans, or whatever group you care about. Those are great opportunities to see how can CPA help that cause. So with that, we will move on to keep advertising that definitely stay informed with CPC by signing up for our notifications through the newsflash, like every other committee and board is available. And finally, on to the public forum. So this is your opportunity to provide feedback on community preservation needs, and those kind of needs are basically needs our community, opportunities that you see if it's a particular project, or if you want to highlight a particular resource that you really care about, that's another opportunity to raise it here. So thank you.
So thank you, Jason. This part of the meeting is for you folks. If you'd like to, we will ask that you come up and use the microphone so we can be certain that your ideas and questions are recorded. Perhaps introduce yourself, but we want to know what you think. What opportunities, what needs do you see? Aspirations, we're here to listen. So.
The Trails Committee has a presentation. Was a copy of the presentation received by your board?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh,
Do you want to come to the
Yeah.
microphone? I will.
Hello, I'm Lisa Grosskopf. I am the chair of the Trails Committee. We have a presentation we would like to share this evening, and I was wondering if you guys had a copy of the presentation. If not, I can share it.
Don't think so.
No?
Check device power.
Chris is working on something.
Do you want me to email you a copy, Chris?
Yeah, and then I can pull it up. Ads for the blank spots.
To rotate.
Could have commercials.
Rotate. Somebody else?
It's whilst we're working on this, is there anything any of you folks would like to share, or?
Yeah, good
it's-
question.
I'm just here
Oh, well,
hear.
I don't know if do you want to take a moment and while the slides are be emailed and all that stuff and Deborah or
My
wait.
name is Deb Delgado, and I'm basically here to just hear the overview of what projects that you have funded, what projects are eligible for funding, because I'm interested in applying for some funding next area, which will be, I guess, in the late summer, fall, for the next town meeting. So that's what I'm here for. I don't have any specific questions, and I don't have any knowledge base to bring to the table. But
Do you think that the information we shared will help guide you as you prepare? First, it's a eligibility inquiry.
Well-
And that'd be like late summer.
I think so. I was hoping to have maybe a little bit more specifics.
We're happy to answer questions anytime. If you've got a specific question, we can answer it now, or planning at Shrewsbury. I think we all know that in our sleep by now.
Right.
But
Well,
that's a great way to get a specific question answered.
Okay, well, just the hearing which applications get grants, get funding, that's helpful to me.
Good.
So I didn't expect to be on TV either. Thank you.
Thank you. How are we doing with that presentation? Get close? Almost.
Now, the other issue is going to be whether I can see it.
Well,
There it is.
Move this back.
If you can just look over your shoulder, you might be able to get that one, can you?
Go back.
Okay.
If you have it on your laptop, then you just say next slide and he'll move it, he'll advance it and you'll have it in front of you.
I've got this too.
Or even better.
Okay,
With
excellent.
notes.
So,
We're prepared for anything.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your time today. It's very, very awesome to be able to be here and to present our vision. The Trails Committee, as you're aware, has been in a volunteer, well, we've been volunteers for 10 years now, over 10 years, and became an official town committee just last year with nominated committee members. And we've, in the past, we were quite passive with our function. We held nature walks, trail walks, did trail maintenance. We worked with the local Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. But we have decided as a committee to work on, see, you probably would have been better, to support the town's open space initiative. We've, yeah, okay. Please, next slide. All right. Melanie is on our committee. Steph Hess, myself, Joe Sweeney, and Paul Gannon, who are not here this evening, are also on our committee. Our charter is to develop new trails and enhance existing trails on public property. We've been tasked with the mission, and we hope our presentation today is viewed in light of the 2030 strategic plan and sparks creative discussion to enhance our vision and assist our execution as we begin to craft a plan. One of the items in the open space or the strategic plan is to evaluate and pursue opportunities to improve multimodal transportation infrastructure, including sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails. And so that's our focus is on connecting trails. Next slide, please. So current state, we have 17 different parks in town. 6 of them have hiking trails of a mile or more. But that's just a mile or so. Next slide, please. Yeah. Unless you actually drive to a trail and park, well, yeah, you have to actually drive to a trail and then find a place to park. A lot of them don't even have parking lots, and you walk in and you can get maybe a mile and a half. Altogether, of the 17 parks, we have about 10 miles of trails, but there's no way to actually get from one park to another without getting in a car and driving currently. And the parking is very limited. So we do have some trails, but they're very short and access is limited. Next slide. Next, click again. And click again. Thank you. So our vision is to establish walking trails between our major parks. We would like to connect a couple of the trails to create 5 to 7 mile long trails and connect neighborhoods to our hiking areas and minimize the necessity of vehicles of actually having to park at these locations. The land is, our trails are less expensive than putting sidewalks through. There's a lot of physical and mental health benefits of spending time outdoors, and we can include some of these playground areas in our trails so people can actually walk from trails to hiking areas to different parks. And that's kind of what our vision is. Next. Thank you. All right, this is our rough vision. We have an 11-mile plan. We call it our 5-year 11-mile vision to connect all the hiking areas in town, starting with Camp Winigan on the bottom, going over to Lake Street, going up to maybe Jordan Pond, maybe not, up to Mill Park, Carlstrom, over to Prospect Park, Rossin Hill, down to Dean Park, and around. This is just a very rough draft. There is another map that was done by Mode Apollo, where he actually mapped out public land from place to place, but a lot of it's on busy streets, and we would prefer not to have our people walking on busy streets. In addition to that, we thought a shorter-term goal would be to connect a couple of the closer parks. So that, again, we could create longer hiking areas. Down on the bottom in yellow is Lake Street and Camp Winigan. Each of these locations have hiking trails totaling about 1.5 miles in length. They're about a half a mile apart, and if we can find some way on public ground that's not a street to connect them, we can actually get like a 7-mile hiking trail, which would be pretty nice. And we could also connect the neighborhoods to those parks so that people can walk. And in the blue, we project connecting Carlstrom Park with Prospect Park. We've got a tentative trail that goes down kind of along the top of the cemetery and then across the 140 up into Prospect Park. We feel that one would be a pretty easy one to do, be minimal cost. And then finally in purple, that's Rossin Hill, which is currently undeveloped and no parking, and we would like to pursue development of some hiking trails in that area. So right now we're just in the early planning stages, but we've got some momentum and we're pretty excited on this. As you know, we have asked the CPC for some funding for a parking lot in Camp Winigan, and in addition to that, the 20% match to a Mass Trails grant for an ADA compliant trail, which is sorely needed in town. There's not very many not very many places where people who are walking disabled can walk. So this would be a great asset to the community. This is our vision. We have, in addition to that, we're asking for a budget from the town itself for planning. We've have a person who owns a trail planning company who is going to present at our trails meeting on Wednesday, and he does planning all over the state, planning and development, installation, and maintenance. Again, we're just planning, but we're pretty excited. Next slide, please. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, a little nervous. All right, questions?
Thank you. That was fantastic, and I love hearing that you've done a lot of work around town.
Yes.
I'm embarrassed to admit it was only a few years ago that I discovered the Carlstrom Forest. And I think if anybody had been out there when I was, they would have heard me say, "This is so cool. Why didn't I know this?"
Right.
So you've already done some tremendous work. And we look forward to supporting you more. Are there any questions or comments?
I have questions. So I know you're going to be working with a trails person
Right.
to kind of put it together, but from what you're seeing so far, those red lines between the major
Right.
areas, does it appear to be land purchases you're thinking of, or like where do you?
No.
From a fund, like when I think of fund, when should I think of
Right.
like funding?
So
where does it- where do we go?
that is a very good thought. Currently, The proposal is to not purchase land, but to enhance existing land. For example, we took a walk, bushwhacking, from, where were we? We were at Lake Street Park, and we went to Camp Winnigan and back. And it's a town easement between houses, but it was rough. And we had several people come out. Can I help you? Are you lost? Matter of fact, one gentleman said, "This is my property. What are you doing here?" And we're pretty certain it wasn't his property. So what we're looking for is assistance from the town and perhaps the professional to come with a GPS device to actually map out where the town boundary is. We will need probably some bridges over some streams. Another big thing that we're looking at is Camp Winnigan to Prospect, going across the 140, is some way to mark the street for crossing, because to me, even though you have good eyesight up and down the street, that's pretty dangerous for people who are walking across. So some sort of signs and markings in the road to watch out for walkers.
So, Stefan S., Vice Chair of the Trails Committee, so thanks again, Lisa, for the presentation. But I think maybe to summarize a little bit is we're looking at this as the lands, we have certain parks that are available, right? How do we get more access to them so people can't, have to get in a car to access them, especially when there's higher density housing and people are in apartments? How can they access the parks and just walk and enjoy these things, these treasures that we have? And I think part of the problem is the lands that are available are rough, right? If they were smooth, they'd be built on already, right? But they're not. So there's challenges there. So we think we're in the midst of planning. We think that we have good line of sight using just town properties and some quiet streets that have sidewalks to connect some of these areas together. But the devil is going to be in the details, right? So we know we have some low-hanging fruit. We're looking to enhance some of these properties that are easy to enhance right now. In parallel, we're bringing consultants to help us plan and budget so that we can come back to you and to the town and with something more definitive. And the first is going to be, hey, we need some more money to plan this a little bit better. And then once we do that, then we'll be able to come with more definitive costs of that. When we build a trail that we may have to cross a stream, or we may have to deal with or go around some wetlands or what have you, those complications, we want to be able to deal with them and have them addressed for the next 50 years and not a 5-year trail that's bushwhacked. We want to have something that's more permanent.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want?
Go ahead.
Okay. Anybody else before I keep going?
No, go ahead.
No? Okay. So along with that, obviously, as a CPC, we're focusing on CPA funding. Obviously, there's other opportunities for other funds, and especially if you're talking about crosswalks. Right. Then we're they're dealing with the state in terms of that. Maybe you're working with our state representative in terms of funding for those kind of projects. But I think this is where eligibility. You want to tune into what is eligible for CPA funding, or if you're not sure, obviously working through planning, right, or through one of us, Melody, to hear out that idea. I'm curious to know if is the trolley line also something that in vision? I know part of it's already gone, like it's already developed.
That's a really good question. Apparently, there was a town meeting some years ago where this subject was brought up, and it was met very unfavorably. And since then, many people I've talked to at the town have been unwilling to bring it up again. However, there are some areas of this trolley line that are clearly open and clearly on public land that we could definitely easily take advantage of. It's all on public land now, so yes, and yes.
That sounds great. Well, yeah.
So one thing the Trails Committee just did was we wrote a letter to the select board and to the town manager so the BWAT line as it's laid out is, as you mentioned, there are already a lot of, there's some buildings already on that line. However, there's sections that can connect areas of high density to some of the major supermarkets and shopping areas and food places where you can potentially walk or ride your bike from an apartment complex, et cetera. So we're looking into those as options, and when some of the, like this behind the DPW, for example, with that project coming, we're trying to we send letters making sure that the town was aware that that piece of that trail was there, and that could be a potential connection from the apartments to, Price Chopper, or even further, right? So those are things that we need to look into, but we're looking to make sure, at least when there's building, there's knowledge that it's there and that's taken into account into the total project plan.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I have one more. On the map you showed, it looked like the red line getting all the way to the Northborough line. Is there something on the other side of that in Northborough that you could take advantage of?
There are trails in Northborough, Westborough, Grafton, and Worcester that it would be nice to connect with eventually. Currently, we're focused on connecting our town and enriching our neighborhoods, but an eventual goal could be to connect with other towns' trails. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so we've had people from Grafton come to our committee meetings. And Northborough as well. So we've even had people from Sterling. So we're aware of the interconnectivity, and there's actually, the more you interconnect, the more grant money there is. So we're aware of that, but the key, it's where we have the ability to connect to those towns, and it's challenging, right? Because of what's already been built and what we have to work around. So we're trying to do this, but it's a little difficult because of what's already been built, and we're trying to fit things in within the framework of the open spaces that we have.
Right. And there's only so much we could do, even though Steph would like to do everything in 6 months. There's only so much we can do at one time. So we're trying to focus on one piece at a time.
May I interject a comment here? Some of the things that we would like to do require the next town over to take some steps. And you can only push them so far, and then, they're on their own. And I have not met with any objections, but sometimes there's like a landowner who is out of town or unavailable or something that they just can't get in touch with. And in fact, we are on the east side of Shrewsbury. We've got a couple good ways to get into Northborough, but there's one or two people who own land that is in the way, and then we can't seem to connect with them. So that is not our business or Westboro. And I've been talking to people about that, and they would like to see something happen, but it's not all down to us. So, we can get right up to the town line, or we can even get a little over the town line, but quite get all the way to a connection of a trail to where we really want to connect up to. But we're thinking about it all the time.
Awesome.
So if you look at the map that's up, and we presented, right? The southern part where Wanigan and Lake Street are actually very close to Grafton. So we're talking to Grafton. They're interested in the connectivity. So then what's the next piece, right? The end of the 11-mile trail on the right of the page, right, think of that as behind Ward Hill, right? So can we connect with Northborough back there? There's some trails. They would have to meet with us, and we figure out how we can connect, and maybe you can go to BJ's and carry your goods home, right? Who knows? Or
We only need
or go to
1,600 feet.
correct, but then in the one area that we haven't really explored as much, but could be some possibility is on that Westboro side, right? So how do you connect trails and walk to the train station.
Right.
Or get a beer at Cold Harbor, right? Or something like that. Those are things that we're trying to consider, and how do you connect and make, you know, a combination of nature, utilization, bikes, walking. There's a lot of different users, a lot of different stakeholders that we're trying to help address. But till now, it's been, you know, we haven't had as much attention, and now we do with our status, and we're trying to take advantage of that momentum and start to build it up.
Right.
And we think, hopefully, you know, this year we'll have some easy projects that we'll have completed. We have a lot of community help that are willing to provide the labor.
Right.
And the things that require more planning or bigger equipment, et cetera, we have to plan for those.
And this was the reason we came here tonight, was to let you guys know, not only because you guys have provided funding for us and hopefully will in the future, but just to let you know, because you are part of the town, how we plan to support the open space initiative and our vision.
So basically, what we're hearing is get connectivity from Broken Creek over to Cold Harbor. I think we'll be fine.
That would be a great trail.
Use a lot.
Are there any existing trails on Rossin Hill?
Official.
So I live at the bottom of Rossin Hill. I'm like, oh. It is a nice spot. Where Prospect goes low, right by Birch Brush, is walking in the dam. That's very pretty in there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And no one really knows about it. And once you walk into the dam, there's an open meadow, which is beautiful. But if you want to do any hiking, you're limited.
Right.
And there are wetlands there, so we have to be very cognizant of that. But there could be potentially a path that brings you back to Prospect and Dartmoor, or brings you along the edges of those developments there, not quite back to the Shrewsbury,
The hunting club?
the Sportsman Club.
Sportsman.
But there's dry areas there as well that could be a great
Right.
1 mile loop, right?
Right.
And that neighborhood doesn't really have a lot of trails, so we're looking to help develop that and give them some, you know, place where they can go for a walk, enjoy nature, et cetera. And there's a lot of rich wildlife out there.
There's a lot of walkers, and for the amount of pedestrian traffic that Prospect Street gets, to take your life
Right.
into your own hands walking on Prospect Street.
But imagine if you could come in from Prospect and Dartmoor and cross street there, North Street, right?
Yep.
And just walk across the street into the park. It's a possibility, because there's a town parcel that's on there that's pretty wide. You could walk into this, you don't need the sidewalk. You can circumvent that. So that could be awesome.
We're definitely excited to hear what you think of next, and hopefully find ways to help.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
you.
so much. Yes,
you.
Steph.
I'd just like to add a comment that
You want to come?
I'd just like to add a comment that they're thinking of how to make the trail accessible for individuals with disabilities. I think that's really important, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With the crossroad. So, so that's a great point, and we're considering that. We've noticed as we have run programs, we're always asking people that come, what are their thoughts and how are they utilizing the trails? And even at Arbor Day, we got feedback. There's some hardcore people that want to hike 10 miles. That's great. But a lot of people do want more gentler trails as well as ADA compliant trails. So for instance, what you put up earlier in the presentation was at Wanigan, there's going to be a parking lot that has handicap parking, as well as there's plans for an ADA trail to bring you to the kind of the top of where the ruin is there. But at the ruin, there's also a nice view of the river. And it's a great place to just enjoy nature and be out there. And if you're, handicapped and you can just wheel up there, or it's a very general path and you could utilize that path. Lake Street has a lot of nice paths. Some of them have actually been enhanced by the Scouts recently with Eagle Scout projects. They used to be muddy and slippery. Now, just on Saturday, Martha led a walk where we had a great nature experience, and there were people from, 3 to 93 on the hike with us. So it was nice.
Any other
And
questions?
I don't have a question, but if I could chime in
Absolutely.
as the Conservation Commission delegate to this committee, I think this is a great plan. I'm so pleased to see the emphasis on interconnectivity, and I'm so pleased to see that you are considering access to high-density housing areas to allow people to access these trails. I had never really thought about the fact that, I knew that we had little pieces of land, but I never really thought about the fact that the trails were so short. And it will bring a totally different experience. You could have scout groups do their 5-mile, 10-mile walk without leaving town.
Right.
And I'm sure that you are aware of the model of the Greater Worcester Land Trust, what they have been doing with some of their trail connectivity. I know I've talked with Melanie about some connectivity up around the Poor Farm Brook area. But they have a 14-mile trail that goes from one side of Worcester to the other. And it, as much as you are visioning, showcases some really nice open space. And sometimes you have to go down residential streets to get to the next part, and that's okay. That's just fine. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you
Oh,
so
can I just make one
Go right
more
ahead.
comment? This committee doesn't hand out money. Town meeting hands out the money.
Right.
So our role is to help to vet the projects, to make sure that they fall within the CPA
Right,
guidelines.
guidelines, right.
Right.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Yes, thank you. All right.
Yes, do speak with any town meeting members that you know who you hope might support the Camp Wanigan project or projects that are important to you. Any resident can do that, should be doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I guess now we get to the less interesting part of our meeting. Not that you're uninteresting, Chris, but the next part of our meeting is our action items. We have to review and vote to amend, yes?
Oh, I'm sorry, Director. Are there any other submissions that we've had to date to review?
Chris, do we have any other submissions to review?
No, we do not.
And we should be receiving them from each of the statutory members of the committee, representative of your feedback. So conservation, historic, right? Everyone should be submitting those entries as you go back to your respective committees, gather their community preservation needs, opportunities and resources. In order for us to have a full and comprehensive perspective, even if it's no change, the question has to be asked of your respective committees. Okay. Thank you. And I think that would go in line with your timing,
Yes.
Chair, right? So trying to get this done by June, which is next month.
Yes, and anything we can talk about an updated map in our next meeting, or if we have any other updates. I believe Kathy did say she entered something, so there may be something entered in there.
And
I can find it.
further, do we have a path forward with soliciting the select board for their feedback? Last we met, we talked about if we just wanted to have a memo go to them to ask them if they want to submit in writing or if they want us to appear before them.
Okay, yeah, we can submit that. I think we had the draft materials, so
Okay.
we'll submit that.
So the next thing on our agenda is to review and vote to amend or reaffirm certain our warrant article recommendations. Chris, do you want to share with the committee the reasons why, as well as the additions? They are in front of you, but there's a little bit of background Chris has.
Yeah, do you want to take them all together or one at a time?
Like, one at a time makes sense.
Okay. Yep, so, so the first one, for the action items on the agenda this evening, first up, we have Article 34. These are all, review and vote to either amend or reaffirm, the annual town meeting warrant article recommendations, related to the motions, that will be posted. So the first is Article 34, which is the 11 Elizabeth Street proposal. As I believe the committee is aware, and was discussed at the previous meeting, this item did receive funding from the Affordable Housing Trust. In review with council, town council, the town manager's office, the recommendation would be to rescind the recommendation to town meeting, so it would not show up in the booklet. And that explanation will be given to town meeting members. So it's a recommendation then to defeat the article. We're unable to pass over articles given the way our charter is written, so it would be a recommend to defeat.
So,
Question?
yes.
So procedurally, are you asking for us to not recommend this?
Correct. So, I mean, it sounds aggressive, but it's simply
Yeah.
because of the way the charter is written. So the request would be to amend the recommendation of the committee and to recommend defeat of that article as the funding is no longer required. And we'll go over the memorandum, and I can show I put some specific language. I'd be happy to pull it up, but I have the specific motion that would be presented.
But it'll still be on, because the warrant's already moved forward, it'll still appear.
Correct, and it has to as a course of that town meeting action, but then we would be requesting to defeat it because it's
Yeah.
no longer necessary.
And we can note that in the memo that some town meeting members will read in advance and some will read as we open the meeting.
Right.
It'll be, yeah, right, and so we'll include that language, you know, I'll have a brief presentation for each of these articles as well, where I'll discuss that, specifically at town meeting, so it'll be made very clear.
Yeah, further? So, I know it seems very like, hey, it's already being paid for, we should move forward, right? Just as is, but just operationally, if we don't recommend something, if we formally don't recommend a project, it doesn't go forward to town meeting. So technically, if we don't recommend a project, not just the word saying we want you to defeat this, but rather technically, if we choose do not recommend this project, it doesn't go to town meeting.
It's my understanding, because the warrant has already been prepared,
Right.
that we were too late to not send it to town meeting. No.
Yeah.
As if, you know, unfortunately, when a candidate passes away before election day, their name is still on the ballot.
Right.
But this is the only action we can't take.
So don't we have to keep it as recommended from its recommended project, but we're asking town meeting to defeat it?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so just, I think technically, we have recommended this project.
For posting.
That's how we got to town meeting.
So we've recommended the project to be placed to the select board to be placed on the warrant. It has been placed on the warrant and published as such. This recommendation is to town meeting members to defeat the article that was recommended, as it is no longer required.
So in the letter that goes out, either printed or the presentation that we're gonna give at town meeting, is it gonna say 9, or whatever our vote was on the day we recommended? It'll be affirmative? we
Correct.
Recommended?
Maybe to help, I'll bring up that memo.
Okay. I know it's a technicality, and I know where we're trying to get at, just wanna make sure we're operating appropriately, right, so that we're not, we're best to just have the right
Because we
legalese.
can't amend the warrants, the articles, once they've gone forward, so it's which choice of semantics is the appropriate way to go
Exactly,
forward.
exactly.
So this is the draft of the memorandum specifically on that Article 34 that will be sent to town meeting members and also available the day of the meeting of town meeting. So we have in our general format, the article, the title, a brief project description, information on the applicant and co-applicant, the amount, the appropriation account, and the CPC work type. So again, so this is what would show up is we are voting not, that it is not recommended by vote of the CPC at the, and we'll amend those, numbers as is voted tonight. We did add in this brief disclaimer, the applicant has attained alternate funding for this project through the Affordable Housing Trust. Therefore, funds provided via the Community Preservation Committee are no longer required.
Okay. If we don't recommend, then I think technically town meeting shouldn't even, I believe that the moderator shouldn't even ask about this article because it has to be recommended in order to go before town meeting.
So it will be before town meeting, and the only option that we have as town meeting members, as the charter is written, is to either pass the article or defeat the article.
Yes.
This is putting forth a recommendation by CPC to town meeting members to defeat the article, because the only other option is to adopt the article.
No, we did have a third choice
Actually,
last time.
John's got
We did
something
have
for
another
us.
third.
I believe our vote will not even show up in the town warrant. The only thing that's on the town warrant will be the recommendation of the finance committee. It's
The
there,
finance committee
it's
vote.
there because we or someone asked the selectmen to put it on the ballot or put it on the town meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
And once they signed off on it, you can't remove it. That's town bylaw.
Yeah.
So all we can do is when we get to the town meeting is basically say, new circumstances have arrived.
Yeah.
We do not recommend this anymore. And I imagine if Chris is getting up to talk about the articles, either he would make that presentation or Deb as the chair would now say, the CPC committee has now voted not to approve the article. And then the town still has to vote. They vote not to recommend it.
And I believe if the moderator intends to bundle these articles, he should be asked to keep that one separate so we don't, town meeting doesn't accidentally pass it. So I believe, well, it's the question of, what we see in front of us is the wording that will be in the memo that is in the packet, which will explain to town meeting members that we do not wish them to pass it. What is the language of what we need to vote on right now?
So an
That's
appropriate.
part of the debate between the two of you. Is
So an
exactly-
appropriate motion this evening would be a motion to recommend defeat of Article 34 to town meeting members.
That makes sense to me. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Second it.
All those in favor of voting to recommend the defeat of Article 34 at town meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? That measure passes unanimously. So the next one is Article 36, the historic gravestone restoration. Chris, you may have more detail, but it's my understanding that it turns out the amount needed is different.
Correct. So this is in relation to the amount in which can be expended from the Historic Resources Reserve account. In discussion, essentially the amount that would be remaining in the account is $160,000. In coordination with the town manager's office, that amount would be appropriate. That does leave a deficit on the project as it was proposed. The intent would be to then resubmit an article for fall town meeting to recoup the remainder of those costs. The project may be able to move forward with the existing amount of $160,000, or would just wait until the fall to resume that work once the full amount is allocated or appropriated.
Question.
So,
Yes, why is it not being just amended so that we have?
correct, yeah, so the, so, we've drafted an amended motion, and so that would be the request this evening, is for CPC to amend their recommendation of the motion as follows, that it be changed to move that the town appropriate $160,000 from the Community Preservation Historic Resources Reserve for the purpose of Mountain View Cemetery Historic Gravestone Phase 2 Preservation and Restoration Project with said funds under the control. That's our general, don't have to read all of that, but, and then I added in that language, as discussed, that the reduced amount will allow for the appropriation and distribution of funds with the remaining balance anticipated to be requested at fall special town meeting.
Yes.
Why is there not enough money?
So the warrant article as written, we cannot amend the warrant article. And in consultation with town council and moving forward, the best practice would be not to specify the accounts in the warrant article. It's the motions themselves that should specify the accounts. And that provides us flexibility as we're working through our budget to make sure that we're allocating them to either the specific account or the general reserve. We do have to specify amounts and from which account. But we'll work at, if there's, the other kind of practice that the committee asked us to evaluate and we're still reviewing is if we could include language for the balance of any funds to be paid through the budgeted reserve account as well. So we're still evaluating if that language is appropriate and could be included as a course of all of these. But either way, that language would be the amended motion. But the warrant article that we submitted was too descriptive, essentially, and should be more general to allow some flexibility in adjusting which accounts that we're pulling from.
And we can't, from our conversation, said we can't amend that to simply add the or undesignated budgeted reserves.
Correct. We cannot amend the warrant article language. We can only amend the motion. So that's why we are recommending that we move, or that we provide a recommendation that the warrant article be adopted, but with the reduced amount. And we're providing that recommended motion for town meeting members.
Could there have been a substitution?
Hmm?
So there have been a substitution?
Well, so
Amending, but substituting.
So we have not yet published the motion booklet. That's went to the printers on Friday. So with this vote of the committee this evening, we may be able to amend that. So actually the motion that shows up in town meeting booklet would reflect this recommendation rather than the 200.
All right, maybe I'm not being clear. Not looking to stick with the 160. I'm trying to keep it whole so that we go to town meeting with one ask. Is it possible to submit, instead of amending it to be 160, come in with a substitute motion that says 160 from this bucket, the $45,000 from the other bucket, and call it a day with one ask?
We have received substitute motions at town meeting before.
I guess.
Yeah. Was that
Question? I'm confused. You said this here is too narrow, and I didn't catch everything you said about widening the thing, but
So the warrant article, as published, specifies specific accounts that we're looking to appropriate the funds from, specifically the Historic Resources Reserve. It has no mention of the general reserve budget, or the reserve, the
65%
budgeted reserve
number.
account, the 65 account.
Okay.
So because that the warrant article language specifies those specific appropriations, we can only amend the motion, but we cannot add in new appropriations. We can only amend the motion from the specified appropriation that we have suggested, which is the Historic Resources Reserve account. So that's why, in coordination with town council and the town manager's office, the recommendation is to raise the 60,000 and then recoup the remainder for fall special town meeting.
Is that because that's all in that reserve account?
Correct,
So there's not enough money in the reserve account?
correct.
Okay.
But there is more than enough money in the
No.
undesignated
All right.
budgeted reserve.
I didn't think there was that little, but yeah, whatever. Okay, that makes sense then. When you were talking other accounts, I thought you were talking about the town accounts as opposed to ours, but that makes sense now. So I guess we basically just have to amend the motion.
Correct, it's a request to amend the motion for,
Yeah.
as written on the screen.
Yeah, because you said it's gone to the printers, so what will be printed is the 205,000. We can't change that.
So we did let them know that we may have a change this evening, so once it's voted, right, the one that's,
But-
is,
See, in terms of us changing it, I guess the selectmen approved the warrant at 205. The finance committee, who actually presents the docket, what the town meeting members get is the recommendation of the finance committee. So if the finance committee doesn't change it, technically, we can't reprint it. That's my understanding of it.
well, it hasn't been printed yet, so that they're,
But you still gotta get the finance committee to vote on it to change it, is my opinion. Because when I was with the finance committee, that was my understanding, that when they voted, they locked in the 205.
I don't believe FinCom has voted on this one yet.
You don't think what?
I don't believe FinCom has voted on any of the CPC articles yet.
I thought they'd done voting, that's why it's gone to the printer. They had their last meeting April 25th, I believe.
Right, they may have withheld their votes until town meeting, the recommendations
On this
until
one?
town meeting. I'm not,
Okay, maybe they did, I don't know. Then, okay, if they did, then we would be okay changing it, so.
But there is
It's
no
confusing,
path,
but yeah.
there is no path to give a substitute motion, a substitute article.
I don't believe so.
No.
Yeah, we had some.
You can only
So
amend the motion.
So but the only thing we can take action on now,
I'm sorry?
because I'm trying to make sure that we're considering the correct things. Because FinCom has not, they have not
We don't know
made an
that.
article, I don't believe, I know that the hearing I went to, they did not, they were withholding a vote on that article
On this one?
until town
Okay.
meeting.
Then,
But that was last month.
yeah, I think the last meeting was April 25th, so.
So our only path forward, Chris, from town council, in your opinion, is to just amend the recommended amount. And
The-
as you've described up here, that will exhaust the funds that are currently in the historic preservation account. And then we can simply, in the fall, have another, fall town meeting will recommend the remaining come from the undesignated. But that we have enough money, it just, because of the language, the way this was written, can't access it.
Correct, that is the recommendation of town council.
Jason?
Has this been brought to the project proponent? Because we, CPC we cannot bind ourselves, we cannot bind time meeting to approve a second phase. The project has to technically be allowed to move forward on its own. Are
Understood.
they able to scope what they would be if they don't get funding for phase 3, essentially?
They've been made aware of the change and would work to either wait on proceeding with the work until the remaining funds are appropriated, or if they're able to scope it out with the reduced amount, would do so.
Okay. Further? Okay, I think maybe this is an opportunity And since we were talking about needs and opportunities, I believe there was an oversight and the view of all our historic cemeteries in Shrewsbury. One of them is, I believe, it's on Grove Street, formerly known as the South Shrewsbury Cemetery. And I think that's an opportunity to have a conversation with the project proponent to see if there's a way to increase scope. If we're gonna go back to the well another time, you have an opportunity to get that one more historic cemetery, which has, it's a small set of plots, but, you know, there are Revolutionary War veterans in that plot. I've walked it myself. I've seen the condition there. It's pretty similar to the Mountain View Cemetery.
Wasn't there an objection that it wasn't in the historic district or something?
Yes, because that was the proponent who was bringing it forward, but I think having our historic commission tag along with it could
Right.
further this
Yeah,
opportunity.
They wouldn't pick up that project because their project is the historic district of the
Okay.
cemeteries. This is outside of that.
But if you already have the right expertise already on the ground, and you
Somebody
have,
else certainly
right.
could pick up that project and take it on.
yep, and you're planning to go back to the well, town meeting, fall, right? Here's an
There's a
opportunity
couple
to
other things.
finish the work.
There's a couple other things in the well coming up too, so.
So we need to make certain going forward that we ensure that our warrant articles are worded properly, so there's the maximum, that it's not too narrow, that the intent is there, but that the motion is where, what fund, what line item in our budget it comes from. That is where it's contained going forward, not in the actual warrant article.
So next time, can we say the historic reserve account and also, and/or the general reserve account?
So
We could
moving
say
forward,
that, or we
moving
just
forward, the
don't say what
recommendation,
fund.
moving forward, the recommendation would be to not include the accounts in the specific warrant language, but rather to specify those accounts in the motions that are presented to town meeting.
Okay, so we don't have to do that. We can just say from CPA funds.
We can specify it during our recommendation, but the warrant, as the draft warrant language that will be provided moving forward will not specify the accounts, even if you specifically do specify them, that won't be shown until the motion. And that allows the committee the ability to finalize their budget and have more clarity on the specific accounts of how they want to divvy up that spending, pretty much all the way up until town meeting
Okay.
via an amended motion.
Now, I noticed that when we bought the land on Grove Street and Lake and Grove, I believe that was from the general unspecified reserve, was that not?
Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that at the time. So that was decided at some point, not by us apparently, but that's the way it worked out.
I'd have to go back to the warrant language that was
Yeah, well, that was
provided,
one
but
where we divided
I believe
half
it
and half with-
specified the general reserve account, knowing that the funding the funding request was not available in any of the 10% accounts.
Okay.
Yes.
Just one more point. If we go to Article 33, which is the budget, where we allocate the 10%, 10%, 10%, and the 65%, why don't we just amend that motion to put an extra $50,000 into the historic account and less in the general reserve account? And that would get us over the top for the 205, and we don't even have to deal with 205. And then I think going forward, later on, we make sure we word the thing on all forward motions the same way. But I think if we simply amend item 33, we can put the money in, we'll have enough money in the account.
The Finance Committee made a recommendation on our budget, though.
Huh?
I think FinCom
But that's okay, we
voted
can
on
amend
that
the
one.
motion, we can amend the motion.
Amend the motion.
Anybody can stand up at the town meeting and say, I want to amend the motion?
No. Not for, there is language in CPA 44B about, you can't amend up.
Can't amend what?
Cannot take an amendment to go up in amount. Not there, not at town meeting.
So I can't move
Not
money
technically
from,
at town meeting, but
Huh?
we
we can't move the money from,
No, but your commentary was about anyone at town meeting. And I'm saying is that's not,
well, I'm talking
But-
generally, you know, a
Yeah,
motion to,
and I'm responding generally.
true.
But yet here, for, I
Yeah.
think you have a creative opportunity, if that's something that is, does that work out, Chris? If we do
I
that?
can't answer that tonight on the fly. I mean,
So, that seems
the
like a
the
great idea,
recommendation,
but
again, the recommendation
but
was
it's
to
not
amend.
possible to have the town council weigh in on it and tell us whether or not we're actually allowed to do that. The one thing we're certain, the one action we're certain, that what the two actions we can take that we're certain of: one, do nothing, or two, recommend amending the amount of, in the motion to 160,000. So I think those are the choices before us. Amend the motion to 160, the amount that is in the Historic Preservation Reserve, or we do nothing and see what happens. What are we thinking?
I think we should amend the amount to 160.
That is the sure path at this time, maybe not the
Yeah.
best path, but I do think it's the sure path.
You know, they'll have enough money to do 5 months' worth of work, I'm sure. And then, you know, when town meeting comes around in the fall, you know, we'll just continue on and they'll be okay. It seems perfectly straightforward. I don't think we really need,
What
Discuss it a
guarantee
heck of a
will
lot more.
what guarantee will there be in the fall that town meeting will approve the remaining amount? Is that, there isn't.
So there's
I
no,
don't know
there's
why
no
not.
guarantee, but I think that all of these projects have been put forth knowing that there's no guarantee of work. And so in terms of the specific scoping of the work that they do and how they formulate that and follow through these projects, you know, they're not able to do any work prior to the funding being allocated. So that's on the project applicant to manage if they want to proceed with the funding that we can appropriate as recommended by town council for this town meeting, or if they want to wait until the balance of the funds are appropriated successfully in fall town meeting. If they're not, the applicant would have to then evaluate how they want to proceed.
haven't they already started?
I don't know that
No,
they've started.
no, you
No,
can't
I don't
start,
think you can start
that-
without,
They were already working on it.
That was the phase one.
yeah. I don't know, it's very disappointing that, you know, they've done their planning, and probably, I don't know that contractors have been secured or anything, but if the funds are available to be able to be moved into the reserve, the historical reserve, then, I mean, I would go for giving them the full amount to get going and so they can finish the project, not wait till fall. I mean, I don't know how much, I don't know what their timetable is, but the more they can get done, the sooner that they can get it done, the better, because you know the condition of that section.
The real issue
So-
is not whether they can get it done before the next town meeting.
Right.
The issue comes down to the bid, because once we vote the funds, they put it out for bid, the person that's now bidding on it, either, if they bid 200,000 and there's only 160,000 available, I'm not sure how the town recognizes the bid, accepts the bid contingently on finishing 80% of it or getting more money. So, because the money's not there, so they may not even want to bid the thing if all the money's not there.
We have-
Or
Have to assume that there's only $160,000 available for that project, as opposed to the 205 that we,
And nobody may bid if they don't think they can
and
get
who
it
knows
done.
what the situation will be in the fall, whether
So,
that money will be available.
right. So the bidder may not want to take that chance and say, well, I'll skip the bid because I know I can't do it for 160.
I find it would be very unlikely that this be voted down in either case.
In the fall.
Yeah, I don't think
I
there'll be
agree
any
with-
problem with it.
Yeah, it's a 100% chance it'll pass, but July 1st, the person bidding can't assume that. Would you assume that I'm gonna take a contract that, under some quirky circumstance, doesn't get passed? Then I'm stuffed cold in the bag. If I bid to do the whole contract, and I'm stuck only getting 160 for it, they might just pass on the bid till the rest of the money is appropriated. I guess, I mean, I don't know. Who knows what the bid is going to do until they do it? But I'm just saying, that could become an issue.
What else can we do then to ensure that they have the appropriate amount? If you don't believe we can amend, we can't substitute a warrant article or a substitute motion? Or what if the substitute motion were simply to say 160,000 from the historic reserve and an additional 45,000 from the unbudgeted, or the undesignated budgeted
Yeah, I
reserve?
mean,
Is
Did-
there
did
an
we
issue with
ag-
the math in this article anyway, right? Total cost for all 532 repairs and resetting include tools, equipment, and materials is $130,000. Construction management cost by a certified project consultant estimated to be an additional 30,000. That's the 160. Where's 205 come from? Or, right? I mean, why is there a cap of 45 with numbers
good
that
point.
listed there?
Was that revised, Chris?
I'd have to look back at the original application to confirm.
We can find that. Since if there is a way that we can make certain that town meeting's voting on the full amount, whichever that is, that would be the preference.
Yeah.
just the one I left over. While he's looking that up, did we agree we can't move the money from the general fund in Article 33?
That we could not do that. If we could, you're right, that would
Why-
solve the problem.
Why couldn't we do that?
No, I think your words were not that it couldn't do it. It's not ready to make a decision on the fly, which means it's technically possible, but it's not recommended to move forward on that.
So there's two options. We can move forward with the recommendation currently from town council to amend the amount to 160,000. Or we could choose to direct staff to evaluate amending Article 33 instead to amend the amount that's appropriated for town meeting through that article. That means that we'll have to have a special town meeting, and it will not be the motion that is printed in the book. The book would be printed as is with the 205 amount, and we'll have to evaluate that path forward. But this evening, the recommendation from town council that has been received is to reduce the amount to 160,000.
Is it possible that if we proposed amending Article 33, that we could get an answer from town council before the town meeting.
Yes.
Okay, because then here's my suggestion. How about if we vote to amend Article 33 and vote to amend Article 36 down to the 160? And then whatever the town council tells us, we go with. I don't know if that's possible because we're amending two motions here. Well, I mean, technically, we could amend both of them.
You're amending two motions, and then you're explaining to town council which one you want to, or then you're explaining to town meeting on the floor which one you want to go ahead with, which is going to lead to confusion. It's,
I may do neither. When Article 33 comes up, if we move if the town council says, okay, we can move the $50,000, if he does that, then the vote we took for Article 38, 36, I guess, we just don't bring it up and let them vote the 205. It's a contingency vote. You know, I don't want to confuse the issue and keep it going, so I mean, just, you know, if the town council says we should go to 160, then let's do that.
Their original application was for 205,000.
Yeah, we were talking about the breakdown of that.
30 and 175.
I can't read it either.
It's really the lighting. Is terrible.
Yeah.
You can probably see it better up there.
So,
Madam Chair, we're waiting on you.
I know, you hear the wheels turning and the smoke going, trying to decide what we can do. So Chris, it is your opinion that the only thing we can do tonight is to vote as suggested, to vote on amending the article recommendation to 160,000.
that is my and town council's recommendation to the committee this evening.
And the solution that John has proposed, I'm sure we have, today's May 6th, town meeting is May 20th.
2 weeks from today.
Can we vote on something contingent on an opinion we don't have and don't know when we'd get?
Town council made that recommendation based on the information given at the time.
Yeah.
But without the new information, maybe town council's opinion would be different. That, yes, we can move the money, so maybe that wasn't an option in his mind, so why can't we ask?
The point being is if we ask, and now we're gonna wait for town council to give us another answer, we have to have another meeting to see
Right.
what we're gonna vote on
Right.
before the town meeting.
Right.
Do
Therein
you wanna
lies the
do that?
wrinkle.
Well, do you wanna do that, or you just wanna go with the 160? Those are the two choices, I guess.
What's there at the table? This is a democracy.
Is it?
Until I say it's not, no. I mean, to me, neither option is ideal because they both have some ambiguity. John did bring up a good point of the legitimate concern about them being able to get the appropriate bids if the entire amount is not appropriated, although we do feel fairly confident that we could. We can't promise, but we do feel fairly confident that we appropriate the rest in October. But if we,
I
You can
suppose
put that-
they'll have to get a bid on
Yeah.
on $160,000 worth of work, and then get a new bid on the next phase, and maybe they'll have to phase it out. I don't know how else would you do it? You can't bid on the whole job without the funds available. So they'll have to proportion the work according to the funds available, right? And that's, if that's what it is, that's what it is, I guess, but
On the
puts
right
a crimp in
side,
their plan.
in October town meeting, the funds would be available, it's that current fiscal year, the funds would be available faster than they are from a vote in May, waiting for July 1. What do we think
So
at
they
this
don't
end
have
of the
to,
table?
they don't have to put in a whole new proposal for the rest of the money? It's like, it's just, I'm confused now, you got me
They
all.
would have to put in another proposal, but in all honesty, if they did any, I'd be severely disappointed if they did anything other than cut and paste what they said before and have a budget for the remaining 60,000, or remaining 45,000.
45.
Who's
How do
they?
they
You
go,
mean the
yeah,
bidder?
how does that 45,000 that we allocated for that project get to them in the fall? Is it just,
The same as it would for the next article that we're gonna discuss amending, which is the additional funding for Article 38.
Camp Woman.
Could the bid be put out asking for, like you said, 2 phases, a $160,000 phase and a $45,000 phase? Because if
Yes,
bids were
yes, it could, and that would
submitted
be on the project, that would be on the project proponent to determine if they want to scope that out or wait until fall town meeting to scope out the entire work.
As if it came that way, there would be their budget for the second
No.
proposal. So, yes.
Okay, so certainly I feel this is very disappointing because the last couple meetings kept talking about how we need to look at the exact accounts that should be in the articles. All right, so this is exactly why I was like hyper-focused on the account information on those accounts and like balances, and I think that's why I was trying to get the budget article ahead of the warrant articles, because that was really driving a lot of the conversation. So I gotta say my piece on that, right? There's a reason to the madness, right? However, I think at this point, we have no impact, we have no path forward other than just to take the recommendation as is, do the 160, call it a day, hope for the best, and that's
Probably
it.
I agree.
And that leaves the applicant with a couple of options, like you said, Chris. They could go for it phased out, or they could just see what 160 gets them. So that seems like the best one going forward. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
A
Second.
second?
Those in favor of amending the recommended amount to 160,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the recommendation passes. And so then the third one that needs amending, for Article 38, it was proposed that we add additional funding to the proposed motion for Camp One again, so that town meeting members are aware that, yes, we did vote, town meeting did approve funding for this project last year, but that this is additional funding that's needed to complete the project. How is it? There. Is it possible to move to that part of it? Since we've got the memo up, we might as well look at that as well.
So instead of the
It's
4,000, this is the
it's
trail.
Article 38,
Oh, sorry.
the parking lot.
No, 37 is the parking lot, 38 is the trail.
Oh, whoops, it's wrong
So
on our
which-
agenda.
So who needs more money?
Is the
It is Article 37, the parking lot.
Yeah, 37.
So in addition to the addition?
Yes. So what we want to consider is a motion to add the words additional funding to the motion for Article 37, not 38, as our agenda says. As this says in the memo, that the project was previously funded, but unforeseen circumstances, portions of the work previously anticipated to be completed in-house by municipal staff will instead be going out to bid. So that is our expression. our explanation. So Chris, do you have the line in the warrant? Actually, I can find it, where we would add additional funding. I forgot that.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Didn't we already recommend this? So, no, not the phrase, not the original one last year. This article for this year.
Right.
So what's the change that we need now?
The word additional.
Just the word in additional funding for the purposes of
You want
building parking.
The
at Camp
word
Lenape.
additional, not
Word addition, yeah, not more
word
money.
additional. Okay.
Yeah.
The way this, I thought you meant more money on top of the more money, saying it's
no,
even
no.
getting higher and higher.
Just want to add the wording.
Keep waiting,
not-
it's gonna be even more expensive. Jeez.
Is anybody gonna tell us how much money you're talking about? We keep talking additional funding, I haven't heard a dollar amount.
That was my
No, no,
point.
no,
Yeah,
no,
the
it's
word
just-
additional.
We don't necessarily
More
have to,
money, it's
was,
Just adding a word.
this is in addition to
The
what
amount
was,
allocated
what
is
was,
additional
um,
amount that we're, but they're adding a word additional to let people know that it's beyond what we did last year.
that was a
Where
question that came up a lot. Didn't we already fund this? Didn't we already pass this? And the answer is this is additional funding
I think
to
you
complete
need
the
more
project.
than one word then.
At the prior meeting, the committee expressed a desire to recommend an amended motion to, as what's shown here, to add in disclaimer that this is additional funding for a project that has previously been funded, rather than to simply have a motion as written here that appropriates the 100,000.
So if the description of the article has that in it, does the article actually have to have it?
What's the total funding now?
The total funding is not changing from what was originally requested. It's 100,000.
100,000.
you asking what
The
we gave
original
them last
article at May town meeting last year was 142.
So it's $240,000 then,
The complete project.
and I think that should be in the article. Just additional means what? The people are gonna be sitting there, and what are you talking about?
That will be in the description of the article that it proposes to continue working.
Well, it should be in there
It says it
somewhere,
was previously funded through the last round.
something to the effect of this 100,000 is in addition to what was approved last year of 140, giving us a total of $240,000.
Can we amend it to $100,000 to be added to funds appropriated last year for the purposes of?
And how much money? You've gotta put last year's amount in a total for the 2 years.
But then will town meeting think they're voting on
It's
242,000?
in the description, it's not in the warrant.
What happens if they don't approve this 100 and they already approved the 140? I guess if they don't spend it, we get it back, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, see, fundamentally, and I don't know if we're prepared to answer this, is,
What's the least messy way
I could see somebody at the town
through
meeting
this so
then,
that it's clear? Because we will have, no matter how many ways we write this and say it, there will still be, excuse me, questions.
Yeah,
It
this-
will make someone think it's 342,000.
the simple question is, why do you need $250,000 for a parking lot?
Well, let's not go there, we already okayed it.
But somebody at the town meeting is gonna say that.
It's basically the stormwater management stuff.
Well,
Plus-
the point is, yeah, I mean,
A lot of the paving materials have gone way up in price.
And I believe
Sounds
part
like
of
a
it is they had anticipated doing a great deal of it in-house. And then it came to fruition that we were not able to do it with town resources and town staff. So it's all being done outside.
I understand that. But, having said that, somebody's gonna say, It's a parking lot. Why do I have to spend $250,000? What we just did at Spags Field, you know, we we put in stormwater management, we put all kinds of things in. We must have dug up and repaved 1,000 feet of a driveway, and that cost $750,000. So now, you're just gonna build a parking lot for 1/3 the price. After everything we did up there, that was a lot of work they did
That's a
there.
lot of work, and I believe it was done by the town.
But that was outside people
Is it?
did that.
I saw orange trucks when I went by. I was just looking at the soccer nets.
Maple Ave was allocated, on the American Rescue Plan,
Yeah.
won a little over $1 million.
Oh,
for Maple Ave.
I was told the project cost $750,000.
So that didn't count for our budget?
No, but that was,
Can I just see that?
sure.
So, we've already, as a body, already recommended this article for passage.
Yep.
So that is a moot point at this stage. But the question is, at hand is, will we amend the motion to add additional funding to it, just to clarify for folks that this is funding above and beyond what was allocated last year?
Sure,
Or not?
thank you.
I would like to know where the words will be placed.
Yes, that's, I think, what we're trying to figure out.
Well, I don't think they need to be placed in the motion. I think they just should be in the explanation underneath.
And as Chris had that, what we saw was the memo that will come from us explaining each of the articles regarding CPC. That does state that. What he's suggesting is the warrant. We're almost there.
That was 27. There you go.
So it would be,
This is the motion as printed. This is the language that would be included on the slide provided to town meeting members. I can go back to the specific motion language if the committee would like to review that.
Can't
There was
So we're,
the description,
so we're discussing changing the motion, not changing the article.
Correct.
correct. So this is the description that will be in the memo, and that was the description.
No, this is
And
the
that
description.
did say that, it just does say that there are other funds already, so this is the motion. What if instead of additional, if it said that appropriate $100,000 from the Community Preservation Open Space and Recreation Reserve for the purpose of augmenting the project of building a parking lot or providing additional funds? So just saying $100,000 of additional funds, that is confusing. I think it needs to be somewhere else, yes.
Where's this ask coming from?
The committee at the last meeting discussed a desire to recommend an amended motion for this article. If the committee feels that the description is sufficient as provided in the memo to town meeting members and as written currently, then no action needs to be taken. But if the committee still feels that there's seeing this before them, that some additional clarification needs to be made, I'm happy to forward that recommendation.
I think we'll leave it.
This description has it, the memo has it. I think we might be muddying the waters if we amend the motion. What do we
Ma-
think?
I am proposing that we take no action.
Is that a motion that we take no action? Do we have to vote on that, or just
Second.
decide no?
Okay.
All right.
All those in favor?
All those in favor of taking no action on that proposed change, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
There we go.
Sounds good to me.
We
It'll
had
be
a
all
smaller
explained.
meeting, we had a smaller group last time, and we have a larger
Yes.
group now.
So, all right,
With
now
clarity.
moving on, the next item on our agenda is discussion items. And the great news is we have already begun discussing a memorandum to town meeting members, which Chris has had up there for us. Chris, what would you like to say about the memo and the draft presentation?
So I think we've gone through most of the articles.
We
you
have.
know, at least the format, which I think is the bulk of it. Just gonna start from the top here, though, so just a reminder on some of the sections that we have. So we do have a brief introduction, the general role of the CPC, just providing some of that background information, the guiding principles and priorities as identified. I did update the community preservation goals as discussed. We did amend those from the prior year, so that has that amended language. And then it moves into each of those articles. So Article 33 has that format with the revenues and appropriations. This one's a little bit different because it's our budget account appropriation. We do include that graphic of the funds and how they're allocated. And then we go into each of those. So I'll update where the highlights are, the vote of the board this evening for that memo. But I was able to finalize this document to a large extent, other than adding in those votes. And I think it's at a place that if the committee feels amenable to, that we could do a recommendation that to direct staff to issue this to town meeting members. So I did include our updated budget. I did one last run through of those numbers. Again, one of the discussions in these appendix documents was actually splitting out each of those items so that it's not showing as like a carryover if it's a full new project. So I did pull those out, so they're now each their new line item. I have one last update to do of the actual specific map, which is Appendix B. It shows the location of all of the projects. The reasoning I haven't done that, I did update the associated table. And what I'm doing is I'm actually, I have worked with our GIS coordinator to actually input this table and information into our GIS system, which allows us actually to pull that up as a layer, connect it with other layers. So it sounds little, but it's actually a huge, in terms of using this data for geospatial analysis or whatever, what have you. It allows for a lot of functionality and also public-facing maps. We'll be able to pull up that layer if you're public-facing. Once it's finalized, you'll be able to click on it and pull it up using the town GIS system. So that table is now kind of by using the tax parcels, rather than doing point layers, it actually specifies the parcels that are receiving funding. I'd be happy to pull up a draft of that map. I think I had it pulled up here. So a lot going on here, but just as an example, see if I can zoom out here. Got our north arrow. Sorry, it takes a little bit to render, but we have the legend, shows each of the parcels, and what I'll end up doing likely is adding some information to the side here, so it's kind of a page printout showing that data table when each article was voted on, and it'll provide a resource either as PDF, but also if we want to do work with specific data points, there's a lot that we can do with that. So that's now in our GIS system, which is actually a huge benefit in the background. So, but that goes above and beyond what the presentation is. I'll just upload that map once it's finalized into this, and we'll with a favorable vote of the board, committee this evening, we'll send this off to town meeting members, via email.
I have a question on that.
Yep.
I looked at that this afternoon, and that document was not in the file this afternoon.
So there was still some, so this document was in there, I had edited up substantially on Friday through article,
No, just the financial summary. The financial summary, you only had FY 22, 23, and 24 this afternoon. There was no FY 25 information.
correct, so the update, that's an appendix showing the budget, from year to year. What was included was the previous year's memo budget, which I was using as the template to edit. This FY 25 is the budget, this here, that's now included as Appendix A, is the budget that the committee voted to approve and recommend.
This budget?
Correct.
We
At the
didn't-
prior
We
meeting.
haven't voted to recommend that document yet.
The memo, no, but we have voted on the budget and
Let's
recommended
back
the
up.
budget.
That's the one that was wrong last month, that I sat down, we had a meeting afterwards. And at this point, I still haven't seen a corrected document. The one that was there this afternoon was still incorrect. So I guess if we as a committee are supposed to say that this is our document, I'm concerned that it's still not correct. We're gonna put out numbers that are not correct. Not the whole document, I'm looking specifically at the financial appendix.
We do issue it as from our department, so,
sorry?
we do issue it as from our department. I'm confident in the numbers, as they've been reviewed and updated. I'm happy to send those out. So, we can issue this document
Is
either
that
with,
document now, if I go back tonight, will I be able to see FY 25?
yeah, I'd be happy to run through that right now. I mean, we have those numbers.
Well, I don't wanna spend the time going through it. But the point is, this afternoon, that was not in the Google Drive. You only had FY 24 up there. There's no FY 25. And like you said, you were using it as a template, because FY 24 was just a proposal, and FY 23 was still the budget numbers. You didn't have any
Right.
actuals.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, there's still some
I would
edits,
like-
there's
I
still
would
some
like-
edits that I need to do prior to issuing it out to town meeting members. This is meant as a indication to the committee that we're doing the town meeting memo that we typically do. It's issued from our office, I'm happy
Assuming
to
it's
submit it out.
there, I still wanna go back and review it for its accuracy.
Happy to sit down and review it, to make sure it's accurate.
The question, it sounded, the way you were speaking was sounding like you guys already had a meeting? Is that true?
Correct.
Am I interpreting right?
Correct.
Okay.
We had a meeting, but I haven't seen the result. Remember last month, I was
Yeah.
saying that the
No, I
numbers
understand.
were wrong. We went there, I
Yeah.
pointed out
Yeah.
all the pieces in there that were wrong,
Okay.
and that's it, that's the end. I have not seen any updates in terms of corrections.
Okay, so you had an identification, you walked through some points of concern, and was there any follow-up from that conversation? You're saying, it sounds like no.
No, I've got the assumption that they
Okay.
agreed what
Okay.
I found was inaccurate, and they were gonna make fixes to it.
All right, so let me ask, materially, FY 25 proposed, does it line up with our budget article?
Correct.
It does. You're
Yes.
saying it does. Do you agree that for the parts so what's not on the article? Prior year balance, maybe
Yes.
investment
The
income, right?
23 and the 24 numbers were not accurate. The 25 is a budget, it's money
Okay.
we anticipate getting. Who knows whatever he
All
puts
right,
up
so
there,
I-
we got
I-
no way of checking it's right, wrong, or indifferent.
No,
So
well, I mean,
we're
there's an assumption.
assuming- Yeah, we're making an assumption of what we're gonna get, so 25 is not the issue, it's what the 23 and 24 numbers are.
All right, I want to just make sure, is that an accurate statement? FY 25, is it accurate that it reconciles between
Yes.
this document and the budget article?
FY 25 reconciles with the budget as submitted, Article 33. The FY 24 budget corresponds with the budget that was presented for FY 24 at last May town meeting.
Okay.
It does not represent the actuals.
Okay.
The FY 23 actuals have been updated from our meeting, and I believe they are consistent.
Okay.
with what was reported to the state.
All right, reported to state, from the state about this, what we received income-wise, surcharge, their match to us, I mean, we're given that number. And then there's our expenses for a closed year. Okay, so I'm personally happy to hear that 25 is accurate, reconciles, right? Because we can't go to town meeting with a discrepancy between those two. 24 should match to last year if it's as a budget, right? Obviously, it'll get updated as an actual next year. What, if there's an accounting disagreement in terms of a prior year before that, 22, I mean, I think does it have a material impact to what we're doing for 25? The request for 20, because we're going to town meeting, we're asking them to do something about 25. That's really the bottom line, what we do for 25.
No, because 25 is a proposal. It's money we haven't seen yet, so we're guessing at what's coming. It's our best guess.
Yes, yes.
So that's an
Yeah.
accurate, it's a number. That's what we think it's gonna be.
Okay. So can we move forward with the knowledge that this document is, 25 is the ask, we have to ask. That should match. Right? We can't have a discrepancy there. 24 reflects a point in time last year. It will be updated when the year closes out. So I'm just trying to get at, is there a material issue that do you think there's a material issue that we need to focus in on?
I don't know. When I sat down with them, the numbers were off by $55,000. So
What,
So-
was there a particular year?
Madam
that was
Chair, I
on?
can answer that question. For the purposes of town meeting, there's no impact to the vote on Article 33.
Okay.
This budget item, this Appendix A that's included in the town meeting memo, is a guidance document only. Again, I think that they've been updated to reflect the discussion that we've had and the actuals as presented to the state in reporting the fiscal activities. And so they are, in my mind, accurate. That said, if there's any discrepancies that are found between now and then, we can adjust them as needed for the budget document purposes, but there's no impact. This is simply an appendix to provide information to the public that wants to view specifically line items of the actuals and budgets.
he's right, it's an informational appendix. It's nothing being voted on. But out of $2 million, let's say, I don't know what the balance is gonna be at the end with next year's budget, but we have $1.5 million to $2 million available, let's make it up, whatever. And again, I don't know how close people look at those numbers, but back then, that number was off by $55,000. It was too high. The $2 million was too high by $55,000, because some things get double counted.
Okay.
So, and that's what I pointed out. He's saying they've corrected them. I just want people to look at it and say, okay, I agree. So at this point, I don't know, because this afternoon, that document was not in the Google Drive. So I haven't had a chance to take a look at it, that's all. But he's right, it's an appendix. It's nothing to do with any of the votes that are going to be taken.
I take comfort in that you're affirming that FY '25 is synchronized with the budget article.
Yes.
And those
Which
are the
matters.
items
I would
here
assume
to
it
be
is.
voted on.
And I think that the actuals will come in and it'll reflect, so if there's an update, and your forecast will always be there too, right? It's including the state match is a point in time, but then you don't know that until the actuals come in. So I thank you for your diligence, for sure, to look at that. I think it sounds continue on, but I think that the document should move forward as is to be used at this point.
Are there any other questions about what's contained in the memo? Or any other suggestions or questions for Chris? Chris, do you need us to vote to accept this memo? Or since it's coming from your office, just simply for informational purposes?
Simply for informational
Okay.
purposes.
Do you want to speak to your draft presentation?
Yes, I was also working on that as well. One of the comments that was provided from town meeting last year was that they wanted to see, rather than the text, more visualizations. So Jason, you had actually some really good photos in your presentation this evening, so with your permission, I'd like to pull some of those for consistency and use them in
Sure,
the
yeah,
draft presentation. But I did want to just go over, started to draft some slides. As I mentioned at the prior meeting, you know, the town manager's office will work to format these to be consistent with their presentation slide deck. But I wanted to get the information on there, just so that the committee could see what we're anticipating presenting. So the format we're looking at is pretty much just from that town meeting memo, that language, the project description, and some of those kind of cut sheet informations of the applicant, co-applicant amounts, and we'll include a graphic for each one, and whether it's if we have a concept plan or if we have a location plan for the one. Again, we've placed some of the maps and those items, so that's the intent, is to have slides that generally follow that format.
May I comment? I flipped through this earlier, and I noticed there was one page that had the picture of Camp Wenigan, the map of Camp Wenigan, and the text was the library story walk. I assume that was a,
Yeah, so that's in terms of formatting. I was using that article
Okay, you
language,
just-
copy and paste to keep it
Yeah,
looking
just a
consistent.
placeholder, okay.
So again, still editing this one. But yeah, this text would be amended to reflect Article 38. But these are all, everything's Article 35.
okay.
I do have a comment on that, if you don't mind. I think that, I mean, I like the approach. My recommendation is, you know, if you go to another one, like, let's say slide 4. I know it's like, you made it like a template, right? Because the text is so small, it's gonna be on screen, you know, like on the large screen, I think you're gonna say, wow, I can't see that, you know? And you're probably gonna wind up having, when someone blows up that text, you're probably gonna say, oh, well, the text ran off the screen, to modify it. So I think my opinion proactively is like, maybe those sections where it says like the CPA work type and bringing it in to fill in the white space on the right-hand side, so that when the text does get bigger, that it'll hopefully fit still on the slide, you know what I mean?
And perhaps you remind town meeting members that the descriptions of each article are contained in the memo in their packet, if they prefer to read it in their seat instead of on the screen. That might help alleviate some of that. Yes, your presentation had some terrific pictures that
Thank you.
Chris can steal those. That'll be all
Yeah.
he needs. Borrow them, that's all he needs.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. And then, next on the agenda, Jason will congratulate me on my first more than 2-hour meeting.
Yes.
What's the score? The annual community preservation plan updates. Have folks submitted their, I know, I have been told that some updates have been submitted. If anyone has more, then by all means get them to Chris right away. I don't know if you want to go, I don't know at 9:15 if you want to go over it page by page, but we should be voting on this at our June meeting.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
When I looked through the, there was a version of the plan, you know, the nice copy of it, and I flipped through it, and I noticed that Yes, could you scroll down to page 14, please? Yes, there. That is not corrected yet. That is still the old stuff. I have,
You did ask that. Yep.
I put in a page of corrections, and it was just a few items, but this chart was in particular something that I could not handle, and I mentioned that I would need input from some other town department to get those corrected. Now, if you look in the shared drive for the April meeting, there's a page of corrections that reflect what a couple of lines I had, and then I think there was some things from Gail on the same page, but it's in the April meeting page. And, that was what we were working on at that time, and I just put it in there, and it never occurred to me that I'd need to bump it up to the next meeting or the meeting after that. But that's where you can find that. Yes, that's the page. In a few, in a few clicks, I guess.
I'll be sure to pull that forward for the next meeting as well.
All right. Well, however you want to do it, but
Incorporate them. Yep.
there was just a couple lines I had about ADA compliance and the acreage of land in Chapter 61. Yeah, and then that one chart that I couldn't adapt for myself because it was from 2020.
Question on historic preservation section, page 22. Gail,
I can't read that, but
it says delete under resources lost, Major Howard Beale
yeah,
School.
well, it was listed as a resource loss, but it's still there, so hasn't been taken down, so I don't know that we can consider it lost. It's on the lost resource list.
I think I would vote
Leave
to
it?
not change that, because as a plan, right, the plan is still that it's no longer,
Well, that was a
Be safe,
question
right?
that we had at the commission. It's like, it's still there, so it's,
but there's still,
I don't know.
it's been transferred and there's a plan.
All right, it's fine. I mean, I'm okay with that. Want to leave it?
There is an error on page 2, after you list at the end of the letter. Go down to where all of our names are. Go back up, go back up. Carl, Nelson, Parks, and what?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Amp,
Oh, yeah, that's,
and.
Parks
And-
and Amp.
Oh,
Carl
yes.
makes it
Why
loud.
is there a big gap in there between John and Mo?
We can delete that.
I mean, it's not like, we all sit together, right?
no, it was probably just the prior name and remove that, and that's, yeah. that's all. Okay,
What else have we got for that document? Folks here, if you've had a chance to submit any
We've done
additions, corrections, or updates to Chris, if you have not, please do so, or at least communicate to him that there's no change. I will work with Chris too. I know we have not gotten the input from the select board. We will do that before we vote on this and add it to the heat map analysis. That's probably the place for it.
yes.
So, last year we had a large public forum, our first year with many, many ideas and suggestions. This year, not so much. And certainly the focus was on, I think we could add to the about trails being a priority, desire for interconnectivity and looking for additional resources and opportunities to create trails. Probably leave the rest of the goal of that the same. I don't know if we need a whole page with input from one area. Do we have any other, did any committee submit any more? Let's see.
Well, I sent Chris a note about identification of historic resources.
Is that in here, Chris?
Markers, plaques.
Not right now, but I'll add in all
Yeah.
the
Okay.
received, yeah.
I had sent it before and I resent it today, so you may not have gotten it.
So if there are things that you've received but haven't had a chance, I don't know why not, to input here, perhaps we need to look at this at our next meeting, since make sure everything is in there prior to that meeting, and then that would change the heat map, perhaps. Should we move those two forward to the next meeting?
Right, yeah, so understanding that we were collecting from the public outreach this evening, I haven't added in any additional. We'll submit out this month to the other boards and committees, as well as I think some of the other municipal staff are involved, and try to get their input for the June meeting, at least in some draft form, and we'll be able to have a more finalized document for the June meeting.
Great. So I would say under this, there's no really further action for us to take on this, but if we have anything outstanding, make certain we get it in right away, and Chris will have those all updated for us for our next meeting. I know I am working on reviewing the application. If anyone has any thoughts, I know Kathy had some that she was going to work with me on, see if there's anything more we can add to it, any clarifying questions. If you've got any thoughts about the application, please do let me know, and we can reflect that in changes. We'll have that for you the next meeting as well.
And our next meeting is,
June.
yeah, thank you.
June.
3rd?
June 3rd.
That's what I thought.
Monday, June 3rd. Well, this year's flying by. I'm not sure how it's May already. Is there anything else besides those items that we'll look at next month that anyone wanted to cover or think is important before town meeting?
I have a comment.
Yes.
It just seems a little disheartening that, we did our approval of our articles at the end of February, and now we're having to amend them just before town meeting with very little time. And it seems like legal should have reviewed them a lot sooner, and we wouldn't have had to, well, it wouldn't have been as big a deal as it is. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for that. We are still learning, but we're
Yep.
fast getting to the end of the point where we can say we're new. We are certainly getting there. Are there any other thoughts, comments before we close for tonight? My
Yes.
first 2+ hour meeting.
That one more thing.
Somebody's
Yes,
a
I
little
do.
too happy
I do.
about that.
I have one more thing to say. Yeah. Given where we are now in terms of timing, so those who are in representative committees, right, you'd be going back to your committee to start having the conversation about whether you want to stay on CPC,
Yep.
right? And certainly, if you haven't already asked your committee for feedback on community relation plan, please make sure you do so that even if it says checked in, no update, thank you, see you next year. That's great.
That's
Right.
valid.
Yep, that's very valid.
But disappointing. So yes, valid but disappointing.
Thank you.
there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor of adjourning for the evening, please say
Aye.
aye. Opposed? Please hold your tongue, no. So that concludes, this meeting has adjourned, that concludes our May 6th meeting. Thank you all
you.